The president is spending tonight at one of his properties outside the White House, which isn't new. He's guest of honor at the first fundraiser of his 2020 election campaign, which is unheard of. No president has ever done this so early. President George W. Bush and President Obama each waited 3 years before kicking off their campaigns for a second term. We'll talk about the ethics and legalities of the event, which took place at the President's Hotel in Washington. We'd bring you video of it, but at the last minute, the White House disinvited the press. CNN's Caitlin Collins is outside the venue, joins us now. So the president is still there. He was supposed to leave about half an hour ago. I assume he's raising a lot of money. How much are people paying for this?
It's a very pricey event, Anderson, $35,000 a head, and they're expecting about 300 guests. So an RNC spokesperson told us earlier they're expecting to make $10 million here at the Trump Hotel tonight.
And those are protesters outside. That's what you're speaking over, yes?
Yes. Excuse the noise. There's a guy to my left right now who has 2 megaphones who is protesting Donald Trump outside of his own hotel here in Washington.
Do we know how much, if anything, the Trump Hotel is actually getting paid to host this event?
No, that's one thing we have not gotten answered today, despite the fact that we have made multiple requests. I made one recently, even about half an hour ago, and we still don't know who is paying for this event at the Trump Hotel tonight. Is it the RNC who is splitting this fundraiser with the president? Is it the president's re-election campaign? Or did the hotel, not charge them for this event? We haven't gotten an answer to that yet.
And the president actually filed his papers for re-election the day he was inaugurated.
Yes, he filed it hours after he was sworn in, just blocks away on Capitol Hill. And now, less than 6 months later, here we are at his hotel holding his first re-election fundraiser. This is not usual. Both George W. Bush and Barack Obama did not hold their first re-election fundraiser within 2 years of their presidency. So Donald Trump is getting a head start. But for Donald Trump, the campaign never really ended. He has held 5 rallies since he was sworn in, all in states that he won. His campaign produced its first commercial in April, and now tonight he's here. So for Donald Trump, this is business as usual.
Did the White House give an explanation for disinviting the press?
No, we have not. Today, the press when we started out this morning, the press was not invited to this event. It was closed press. And when Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked about this at the press briefing today, she said that the reason was because it was a political event and they were keeping that separate. After some prodding from the press, they decided to invite a few pen and pad reporters and 1 camera. Well, then 2 hours later, they got back to the press and said, actually, we've changed our minds. No press is allowed because of a logistical issue. Now, it's a little perplexing what that logistical issue could be, because there are 300 people in that room right now, so surely they could have made room for a few reporters. And if they had planned this in the beginning to allow the press in, it wouldn't have been a last-minute issue. So there is no press in there listening to the president give remarks to some of his biggest donors right now.
All right, Caitlin Collins, I appreciate you battling the sound of someone with the megaphone right next to you. Thanks. More now on the legal and ethical dimensions. Joining us is former George W. Bush White House ethics advisor Richard Painter. He currently teaches law at the University of Minnesota and is vice chairman of a watchdog group that's suing the president over the Constitution's emoluments clause. Also with us is David Fahrenthold, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter for The Washington Post, former Obama White House Communications Director Jen Psaki, and Jeffrey Lord, well, because of Ronald Reagan, and support of Donald Trump. So, Jeffrey, I mean, the fact that at the last minute the Trump campaign decided to bar the press from this event, is that a problem for you?
No. Anderson, this kind of thing is so incredibly common. When I knew what our segment was here, I went back and took a look. President Obama, for example, met with all kinds of donors to his library in private, and they went out and raised money for it. If you remember his famous bitter clingers remark, which was about Pennsylvania, which is why a lot of people in Pennsylvania remember it, is because somebody smuggled out a tape of it. The press was not invited. It was a fundraiser, as I recall, in San Francisco. And to be bipartisan about this, President Bush 43 had his pioneers and rangers who raised all kind of money. They did these kind of things in private settings. There's absolutely nothing unusual about this. The only thing that is unusual is he's doing this so early. But frankly, Anderson, you and I and so many others spent a lot of time in 2015 and 2016 saying this has never been done before and Donald Trump is doing it. This is just one more thing.
Jen, I mean, it does fit into a larger issue of transparency about the White House and by extension now this campaign as well. Do you see a problem with this? I mean, as Jeff said, you know, President Obama held fundraisers without the press being present.
Well, first of all, he's referring to a fundraiser back in 2007. I was on the campaign at the time, and we actually did change our policies to allow reporters in. Sometimes it was a print pooler if it was a very small fundraiser. Oftentimes it was the larger pool. And in the White House, when it was a fundraiser that was over 100 people, maybe even smaller than that, we always had a pool present. So actually that's not accurate. I think the piece here that is very, I was there, Jeffrey, the piece here that is should be very concerning to Republicans is that President Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. So it's not uncommon to fundraise this early. President Obama did fundraisers in March of 2009, but they were for the DNC. So if you're the RNC, the NRCC candidates he's asking to vote for this, the health care bill that's incredibly unpopular, you really want this money, and you are wondering why he is raising money for his re-election campaign that's more than 3.5 years away.
David, the event being held inside a Trump property, that's also nothing new. The president has patronized a lot of Trump businesses, not only during the 2016 campaign as well, and that's actually the president leaving the Trump Hotel, not only during the campaign, but pretty much every weekend he's at some sort of Trump business.
That's right. I mean, the campaign experience is particularly relevant. Last year during the campaign, he held a lot of events at Trump properties and plowed a lot of money that people had given to his re-election campaign, turned that from campaign money into personal money, into money for his business. That seems to be what he's doing here tonight. If he is charging somebody, the RNC, the re-election campaign, for the money, some of this money that's coming in from donors ends up in his personal pocket, not in his political campaign. That if he can get away with that, doing that to his donors, I guess that's fine. The really interesting thing to me is the way that the Trump organization is changing. He's not running the Trump organization anymore, but it's reorienting to sort of be about monetizing their connections to the president, rather than what it was before, which was monetizing golf courses, banquet halls. It's becoming much more of a business that sells a connection to a guy who's in power, rather than what it was before. Tonight's a great example of that.
Richard, do you have any ethical issues with what's going on tonight?
I certainly do. As an American and a Republican, first I'm disgusted with this campaign finance system where you have all these fundraisers. It's clearly a pay-to-play game, and that's not going to stop until the Supreme Court overturns Citizens United, or we do something about that. But then on top of that, we have the fact that a president is starting so early in the process, so early in his term, raising money for his campaign rather than focusing on the job of being president. And then furthermore, he's taking a cut himself because he owns the hotel where the fundraiser is. And this is not the only a big event at that hotel. There have been lots of events at that hotel, not political fundraisers, but trade associations and others that pay top dollar to rent out ballrooms there, have parties, bring in people from the White House, from other executive branch agencies. That's the go-to hotel in Washington now for anyone who wants to schmooze the Trump administration. And that's simply paying money to the President of the United States, to a company that he owns, in order to get access to his administration. And that's just flat-out corrupt, on top of the corruption that we've had in both political parties from our campaign finance system. I think the whole thing is disgusting, and the American people are going to get fed up with both parties if they don't fix our government and get the corruption out.
Jeff, I mean, if the idea was draining the swamp, is benefiting financially? I mean, we assume he's charging for this fundraiser in the ballroom. We don't know because they won't give any comments yet on it. But assuming he is charging, because he has charged for other events in the past, I mean, it is to the point that was just made by Richard. I mean, is there anything problematic about that and benefiting financially?
The thing that Richard ignored, and I'm not picking on Richard here, because this is a commonplace assumption in the swamp, having worked there for a long time. They have a problem with something like this, but when it comes to political benefit, which often leads to monetary benefit, they have no problem with it.
I've got a big problem with that. Big problem with that.
You what? You do or do not?
I have a big problem with the political trading of campaign contributions for political favors with both political parties.
Okay, then, Richard, let me just say, and I should say before I started out, I met then Governor Bush long before he was governor. I think the world of him. I voted for him twice, but he used the office of governor of Texas to get elected president of the United States. He used all sorts of donors, all sorts of Texans who contributed money parlaying his political office into a larger office. And he is not alone. Every politician in America does this.
And let's fix Citizens United, but we don't have to have a hotel on top of it.
If we're going to rein in the financial aspect, we need to rein in the political aspect of it, and nobody talks about it because everybody's got their hands in the pot.
Well, let's get him out of the pot, but we don't need the president sticking his hands in the pot twice. One for political contributions, and second for his own hotel for the Trump Organization.
For Donald Trump is for George W. Bush and Barack Obama. That's all I want.
We don't need to talk about the past. We need to fix the future. And this is getting worse and worse and worse. And we're not facing up to it. We're just pointing fingers at Obama or Bush, and that is not going to work for this president.
Jeff, do you not see a difference with a president actually benefiting financially from a fundraiser? I mean, personally benefiting for him and his family?
Well, Anderson, Barack Obama is just, what, signing a book contract for how many tens of millions of dollars because he was president of the United States? And I worked for Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan benefited from the same system. I mean, if we're going to have a revamp of the system, then let's be honest and say what? That Hillary Clinton's forthcoming...
that wasn't... you can quibble with, you know, should the president write a book and make millions of dollars, but he's not doing it while he's president of the United States. Donald Trump is president of the United States and he's making money.
I want the same standard for everybody. Everybody. Did the Kennedys make money from their various properties when John F. Kennedy was president? The answer is yes.
Not off the presidency, he did not. He did not have a so-called winter White House or summer White House where people paid money to go to his place in Hyannisport. That is disgusting. He did not do that. Do not accuse Jack Kennedy of doing that.
Have you ever heard of the money earned from the merchandise mart, which was in the Kennedy family, a big property that they made millions of dollars from? Are you kidding me?
He did not use the presidency to make money.
The fact that he was president attracted the money.
They had the money long before he was president. So did Donald Trump.
And so did Donald Trump. And so did Donald Trump.
But he is using the presidency to make money when he has the fundraiser at his own hotel. There are dozens of hotels in town. He could have chosen other hotels. He should not have owned that hotel. It is against the terms of the GSA lease for him to be receiving money from that hotel. He doesn't need to do it.
All right, we got to go. Appreciate the discussion. Thanks, everyone. Coming up next, the question of collusion with Russia, and the president has claimed that he's totally cleared of it. You're going to hear what the Republican chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee has to say about the state of his investigation. Is there any there?